My friend lied to me about having cancer, all in some weird attempt to try and see if I even care about him in the first place. But now, our friendship is practically ruined, as I am now highly considering blocking him and never talking to him ever again. This story also came from the Am I the Jerk subreddit. Check the links in the description if you would like to submit your own stories, and don't forget to subscribe to Am I the Jerk. Okay, just for a bit of context, I'm a 17-year-old male, and my friend, who we will call Jack, is 16 years old. For a while, I've had braces because of my underbite, and when Jax called me, my dad was driving me home from my dentist appointment, which Jack absolutely knew I had at the time, and he's almost perfect every time at guessing when I'm done with them. On the way home, he FaceTimed me while I was laying in bed. He was groaning, and he actually looked really sick, and when I asked him what was wrong, he told me straight up, "I have cancer." I sat there for a second thinking about what he just said. He wasn't on speakerphone, but since I was sitting next to my dad in front of him, my dad asked me if anything was wrong, and I just said no and went back to Jack. I then asked him, "Are you serious?" Which he responded by saying yes. I then asked him if he was in the hospital, and he said no again, to which I responded by saying, "Okay, well, why not? Does nobody know what's going on?" He then told me, "Oh, after they gave me this thing that is attached to my arm, they let me go home." After he said that, I knew that something was off. So I asked him, "Okay, could you show me the thing on your arm?" To which he said, "I don't feel comfortable doing that." So at this point, I thought he must be going through it right now, so I just didn't want to push it. So I told him that I had to go and that I would call him back later on and to please get better soon. After I hung up, I told my dad that my friend just called me and said that he had cancer. My dad then asked me if I was sure, and I said yes. Well, 1 week later, I get a call from my other friend who we will call Aaron, and Aaron is in the friend group with me, him, and Jack. And apparently, Jack had called him and said that he had COVID, but I cut him off and said, "Yes, I know he has cancer." To which Aaron responded by saying, "Okay, but I thought he had COVID." Well, once I heard that, I knew that Jack had been lying to me. So I told Aaron that Jack was definitely lying, and he said that he already knew that because he had just been in his house yesterday, and there were no signs of anything that would prove that he was even sick. So me and Aaron came up with a plan to get him to confess, but the day that we were going to go through with our plan, I get a notification from Jack. Aaron was with me in the house, so I brought my phone to him, and we read it all together. The text was from Jack, and he was confessing that he lied and he was sorry. Now, I was happy he confessed, but then what he did actually sank in, and I was absolutely pissed. The main reason I was mad was that, for starters, my uncle died to cancer when I was very young. Secondly, his excuse for it was to say, "I just wanted to see if you cared about me." So after this, me and Aaron stopped talking to him. Aaron blocked him, but I didn't, because I feel like I was too harsh, and every now and then, I text him something, still trying to figure out why he did it, because I don't believe he only did it because he thought I didn't care about him. So am I the jerk here? What should I do? Okay, I'm gonna say it straight up. Your friend Jack is a massive piece of crap. First of all, anyone who's like, "Oh yeah, I have cancer," and then turns around and says, "Oh yeah, I was lying to see if you actually care about me." Like, that is such a horrible thing to do. It legitimately has no good excuse. I don't even care that this guy's a teenager. That is not something you joke about or even like lie about in any capacity. And I honestly think that anyone who would lie about having cancer is a massive piece of garbage. And that's my honest opinion, because just like the original poster, I've also had family members who've been affected by cancer, and that is just downright offensive to lie about. So for him to do this is really just so disrespectful, and if that was me, I would lose trust in him completely after that. Like, what else is he lying about just to gain attention? Because legitimately, that's all this was. He was just doing some weird attention-seeking behavior in probably one of the worst ways possible. So no, I don't think you're the jerk for pulling away from him, and I think your friend Aaron is really smart in this scenario for straight up blocking him, because I really believe that this is not someone you want to call your friend, and I think you can absolutely do better than somebody who lies about having cancer. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for refusing to let my daughter try and pursue swimming as a professional career by telling her that it's too late to even get started? Because right now, my husband is very upset with me, and at this point, I seriously do not know what to do. Here's what happened. I'm a 45-year-old female, and I have 2 kids. I have a 16-year-old female that we will call Laura, and a 14-year-old male that we will call Kyle. Both of my kids take competitive swimming as a hobby. However, Laura is more athletically inclined than Kyle is, and takes swimming more seriously than he does. She has been to regional and state championships a few times since elementary school, and has even gotten close to qualifying for nationals a year ago. Recently, Laura came up to me and told me that she really looks up to athletes like Michael Phelps and other great swimming legends in Australia Australia and across the globe. She is a huge Olympics fanatic like our family, so I wasn't surprised at first. However, she then told me that she wanted to pursue swimming professionally because, in her words, she's made a lot of progress and thinks it's possible for her to get to the Olympics if she just keeps training harder. She also told me she really wants to represent Australia at the Olympics in the future and that she cannot live without swimming. However, I shut her down really quickly after she said that. I told her that there's athletes younger than her already swimming at the Olympics in the preliminary stages and even at the finals. I reminded her that Michael Phelps was only 15 years old at his first Olympics and she didn't even qualify for nationals. And then I finally said that it was a bit late for her to try and pursue swimming professionally. I then reminded her how rigorous and strict the training was, both physically and mentally, how it was much more different than her swimming lessons. I also told her that she could put aside swimming until university and that education was much more effective than athleticism. Well, after I said that, my daughter looked sad and nodded before heading to her dad's room, and I heard crying in his room. After half an hour had passed, my husband came downstairs and confronted me by saying that what I told my daughter was extremely cruel and it put down her self-esteem significantly. I retaliated back, saying that I was only expressing concern for Laura and that my concerns were realistic. After I told my husband my thoughts, we got into a bit of a dispute because, in my husband's words, my daughter's dreams were very realistic and that I shouldn't police my daughter's career autonomy. So I really need to know, am I the jerk for what I said to my daughter? What should I do? Okay, I'm gonna take a pretty firm stance here and say that yes, you are absolutely the jerk. Your daughter is 16 years old. She has her entire life ahead of her when it comes to figuring out a career. So for you to shoot down her dreams like that all at the drop of a hat and then have the audacity to compare her to Michael Phelps and be like, well, he made it to the Olympics at 15 and you didn't even qualify for nationals. That really sucks, and I really cannot believe you would do that to your own kid. This would be different if they were 26 and they said, oh, I want to be a competitive swimmer. At that point, I would agree if you said, okay, it's way too late to do this. You need to figure your life out, and this is not the time to pursue something new like this. But that's not what your daughter's doing. You don't know what kind of future she could have in swimming. She very easily could excel and be a really good swimmer on an international stage. And by the way, if you're really from Australia, the fact that she's coming close to getting into nationals, in my opinion, is a huge deal. Australia has some of the best swimmers on the planet. Who's to say she wouldn't break through in her senior year of high school, make it into the national competition, and then excel from there? You definitely don't know that. And who's to say that she wouldn't use her swimming to go to college? The way you handle this was completely inappropriate and very cruel. Your husband is 100% right. So yes, I think you're the jerk, and I think you really should apologize to your daughter because she is still young and she has every right to dream just as much as anybody. Am I the jerk for telling my father that he's no longer allowed to cook for my kids after he tried to cook us meat that expired over 3 years ago? Because right now, my dad is very offended, and at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. I'm a 30-year-old female, and my father shops like a doomsday prepper. Whenever he gets groceries, he buys enough to feed a family of 5. He's also the type to buy food that he doesn't plan on eating anytime soon, and he has it just in case he might crave it. And trust me, this has always been a problem. When I was younger, my sister and I spent more time at our mom's place, and we weren't there often enough to eat much. Nowadays, he lives alone, so even less of what he buys is even eaten. The result has always been the same. A lot of the food that he buys ends up either spoiled or sitting in a freezer until the end of time. We've never eaten anything that's rotten or moldy, but my dad has always refused to listen when I tell him this is bad for his health. My family went to his place for dinner about a week ago, and I arrived to help my father out as he planned on making burgers, and my husband would come later with our kids. I had offered to buy some burgers when we decided on them, but my father said that he had some at his place. I didn't think anything about what that could mean until I saw him pull out a box of burgers and some cheese from the very bottom of the freezer. Now, as both had clearly been there for a while, I checked the expiration dates. The cheese expired in February, and the burgers expired in March of 2021. I asked my father if he actually planned on cooking that food, and he said yes, as both were frozen and still fine to eat according to him. I told him I didn't care how edible he thought the food was. The meat was older than my daughter. We could think about something else to make, or I could have my husband pick up some burgers on his way to my dad's place, but I am not having my kids eat that. Well, when I said that, my father got offended. He started going on about how the food was safe and how a dozen nutritionists had said so, but these are literally some guys his girlfriend found on TikTok. He said he couldn't believe I didn't trust him. He continued talking about how dramatic I was being for a while, but I was very upset at the way he responded. Finally, I said to him, my kids aren't eating that, and I don't want you cooking for them again. Either my husband buys the burgers or we are not staying for dinner. Well, eventually, my husband ended up buying the burgers, and we ate them peacefully and no one fought in front of the kids. The next day, my father told me he was upset by what I said. He said he felt offended that I'd accused him of putting his grandchildren in danger like that. But I told him that wasn't my intention. I just didn't want to feed my kids 3-year-old meat, but he just refused to listen to me. My dad's still insisting that I'm the one being dramatic. My husband is completely on my side, but thinks forbidding my father from cooking for our children might have been a little bit too much. So am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? No, I don't think you're the jerk at all because there is no way I'm eating 3-year-old meat. That should have been rotated around and he should have used that way sooner than March 2021. And by the way, that's just when it expired. Sometimes this meat is good for like a year and a half. So I'm willing to guess that he probably bought this back in like, I don't know, 2018 or 2019 or something like that. And that would be especially true if it's like packaged and it's meant to be stored for a long time. But regardless, if something expired back in 2021, there's no way I'm ever going to eat it. Because in my opinion, this is just further proof that your father's being irresponsible with his food. If someone wants to have a large supply of food storage, then go for it. But they need to be responsible with it and actually use the food that they have in their storage. Otherwise, you're going to look up and have 3-year-old meat sitting in your freezer. So no, I don't blame you for denying him ever cooking that food for you, because if I was in your shoes, I would have done the exact same thing. An entitled jerk demands that I turn down my music on my property, as he claims that it's too loud and that the lyrics are way too vulgar. So I decide to maliciously comply by loudly playing opera music from my 12-inch subs on my car in a way that he could never possibly ignore. Here's what happened. Okay, to start things out, I need to give some information. This happened over 12 years ago at my family's house when I was about 22 years old, and I was passionate about my old SUV that I had painted a metallic red with neon lights underneath and had on 22-inch chrome rims and a decent stereo that you could hear about a quarter-mile away. Our neighbors themselves paid absolutely no attention to anything going on outside their doors, and although we are all friendly and any one of us would drop what we are doing to help one of us in need, in 20 years, you can count the conversations that we've exchanged without taking off your shoes, and we all have our own little hobbies. One of them has goats and chickens, another keeps bees, and one across the road repairs lawnmowers, ATVs, and such, and I never do anything that would normally invite onlookers. But one Saturday afternoon, I was changing the oil and spark plugs on my SUV with a beer and some Cheetos in our driveway, and I had a tiny speaker hooked up to my phone playing some old school rap. And on that day, the lady on our left was having some landscaping and yard work done. I was rolling around under my truck on my back, literally elbows deep in the greasy mess and a little irritated because I had just dropped my 10mm socket, but as I did that, I see some steel-toed leather boots walking the 30 feet up to my driveway and up to my Suburban. I roll out from underneath my car and I gave the guy a very confused look. Well, he straight up just told me to turn the music down because he didn't like the vulgar and violent lyrics. And seriously, it's like gospel music must be the only music he ever listens to. And I know for a fact that this little speaker couldn't possibly be legible to anybody 50 feet away, especially if he's concentrating on cutting shrubs and planting flowers and such. Despite my passions, I'm not a complete jerk. So I say to him, okay, no problem. I'll take care of it as soon as I get my hands wiped off. Have a good day. He then stomped away in a fit, muttering some awful things underneath his breath. And when I heard some of the vulgar things that he was saying, that really sickened me. But it was right then that I had a brilliant idea. I immediately turned off my tiny speaker playing Underground Kings and pulled out the battery jump box, put it on my truck's battery, and went inside my house and got my opera CD collection and rolled down all the windows to unveil my 4 12-inch subs and 8 6-inch mids, and I put on The Valkyrie by Wagner and unleashed the stereo's 2,000 watts and went back under the SUV to finish draining the oil. Now, the look on this guy's face was priceless. I guess he didn't think that someone like me had a taste for opera, which is not usually something I bring out on a hot day of rolling around in the oil, but I do enjoy it when I'm relaxing in my den sometimes. After about 20 minutes, I was done with the tune-up, and I started up the car and decided to drive it up and down the road just to make sure that the oil level was settled. I parked back in my driveway, shutting everything down, and as I put everything away, I see the landscaping truck leaving without taking the time to close his tailgate, and by some kind of sweet karma, some of his tools rolled out as he slammed the gas pedal. And it was right then that I had to turn around so he wouldn't see my ear-to-ear grin. 2 days later, while taking out the trash, I waved to the neighbor lady who was having tea on the porch, and I explained what happened, and I wanted to apologize if I caused her any problems with her landscaper. Well, that sweet old lady just laughed and said, oh, that guy's a jerk anyways, and he even tells her grandson to lower the volume on his video games if he's ever over at her house while he's working. But even though I still see the same landscaping truck on occasion, I'm sure that this guy won't be forgetting me anytime soon. Yeah, I'm of the opinion that if someone's not bothering you and they're doing something that's literally away from you and they might be making like a little bit of noise, then you have no right to go over there and be like, you need to turn all your music down. You need to be quiet. You're disturbing me. Like, no, that is not how this works, especially if they're on their own property and it's like a normal time of day. Now, if this guy was playing music that was really loud in the middle of the night and you were somehow like a neighbor or something along those lines, then sure, it's time for them to be quiet. But if they're out on their own property, literally fixing up their car and trying to get something done, and you walk over there all disgruntled and say, you've got to turn it all down, then in my opinion, you are in the wrong and you absolutely deserve to be humiliated and put in your place. An entitled Karen freaks out on me after she tried to buy alcohol for her son who very clearly could have been underage. Here's what happened. Okay, for a bit of information about me, I don't really drink or do any kind of substances, and I've been homeless for a while, but I managed to find myself a job. And this situation literally just happened to me. I was sitting at the counter, as my job involves renting boats and cottages, but we do have a storefront that sells beer, fishing supplies, boat rentals, and food. A person came up to the counter with a 24-pack of beer and tried to buy it. The guy looked young, maybe under 19 years old. And for reference, I'm Canadian, so you need to be 19 to purchase alcohol. This guy didn't have any identification, so I told him that I couldn't sell him booze. Well, he clapped back at me, saying it's okay because he's 20. But I told him I can't sell you anything without an ID. No ID, no sale. So at this point, he really started to talk down to me, saying he's old enough and told me not to make him go get it. He then pointed to his car and said that he's busy. So I said to them, okay, so you're driving without a license? And when I said that, this guy got flustered and finally left the store. About 30 minutes later, this older woman walks in and I see the kid from before outside. She grabbed a 24-pack and came to the counter. She pointed outside and asked if I was the person who wouldn't sell her kid any beer. And I just said, yes, if you don't have an ID, I'm not going to sell it. She huffed at me and said, whatever, and then tried to make her purchase. So I asked her, does your kid have his ID on him now? But she said no, that she's buying the beer. But I said, unfortunately, I can't sell it to you without him having an ID. This lady then started to scream at me, saying that she's in her 40s and that she has her license. But that's when I explained that I couldn't sell her alcohol, knowing that she's giving it to a potentially minor or someone without an ID. She then screamed and called me a moron. She flipped me off and said that she was going to call corporate to complain about me. I told her, ma'am, it's a small business, but I'll happily give you the owner's number. Well, she eventually left and I called the owner to explain everything. And trust me, she was not even mad. Instead, she laughed and said that I handled it perfectly. Yeah, I think you handled that perfectly as well. And honestly, I think the fact that this Karen seriously thought she could buy alcohol for this kid without ever trying to account for his age or even him having an identification in the first place, like that is crazy to me and that is not the mark of a good mother. So good for you for standing your ground and not letting her break the law and probably get you in trouble. Because if something went wrong, I guarantee you this absolutely would have fallen on your shoulders. Would I be the jerk if I said no to my parents moving into mine and my husband's house that we are literally renovating as we speak? Here's what happened. My husband and I recently got married in January of 2024 and have been waiting to move into our own 3-bedroom apartment that is still going through renovations that's taking longer than expected. My husband moved into my dad's 1-bedroom apartment after we got married, as no one else has been living there except for me. I've also been paying rent ever since I started working. For context, my dad has been living in a rented, semi-detached home with his stepmom and her mother ever since he remarried 7 years ago. They also have a male tenant living with them in the house who is rarely home due to his working hours. Also, my dad's mother-in-law owns a studio apartment that is currently vacant. A few months ago, my dad came to us and told us that the owners of their rental house wants it back to undergo renovations and then renting it at a higher value, which my parents clearly cannot afford. While my husband and I were house hunting, we brought it up to my dad and offered to let them stay with us and at no cost. Well, he declined, as he said my stepmom would not feel comfortable having to live with another guy at close proximity, namely my husband. Also, it's too far from her siblings and the city center, and she is used to living in landed properties, so an apartment would be too small for her. We also offered to move out of his house so that they can move in, but he declined, as there is only 1 bedroom and her mom insists on following my stepmom wherever she goes, even though she has her own house. Well, yesterday, my dad sat me and my husband down to let us know that he will be moving in with us to our new home, as time is running out for them, and that they'll move out after 4 months months once the renovations are done. However, my dad told us that it will be him, my stepmom, her mother, and their tenant, and they will all be paying us rent. But I was really confused, as this is a 3-bedroom apartment, so where would we have any kind of space for the extra tenant? He then continued, saying that me and my husband can continue living in his 1-bedroom apartment while they live in our new home for the next 4 months. Well, that got me angry, because they have decided to not live with us, but somehow made the decision about where we will be living. I had to maintain my composure, as I was with my family and I didn't want to ruin the day. Once we were home, my husband and I sat down and talked about what we were going to let my dad know if he ever were to bring the conversation up again, and have decided that they can live with us and still not kick us out, or they can live elsewhere since they actually have choices instead of choosing the easy way out. So would I be the jerk if I denied him living in our new apartment? What should I do? Okay, this is ridiculous, because if I was in the original poster's shoes, these people would not be moving into my new apartment. That's not happening. That is an insane demand that I would literally ignore right there on the spot. He can find another apartment somewhere else, and he has no right to try and kick you out of your 3-bedroom apartment that you're literally getting fixed up so that you can live there. Like, that just makes me really mad even just thinking about it. So no, you would not be the jerk for telling them to kick rocks, because these people are being very selfish, and it quite literally is only going to be at your expense. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you want some chill music to put on in the background, check out easymode.com. If you like Am I the Jerk, subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.